Hello guys, and welcome to the hybrid Sorc build video. So this is the hybrid Sorc. I mean, this is similar to the hybrid Templar that we had before. This is a PTS build, but this time we're building it a different route on the Sorc so that we have a larger magicka pool. So we actually had access to a damage shield that was usable. But as you can see from this build, we have really awesome offensive weapon spell damage here. We are running the infused bow, so we buff up to 4,800, over 4,800 weapon spell damage. So huge amounts of weapon spell damage. We've got awesome sustains. Using the pot, we buff up to 2,100 stamina, 1,800 magicka recovery. Crazy sustain on this build too. On top of that, we're a Sorc, so we got Dark Deal. So you should have literally no sustain problems, man. Sorc can never run out of resources. This build will not run out of resources ever. You don't even need to use potions on it. You can just use Dark Deal and you'll stay alive. So there you have it. Awesome, awesome. So our max magicka is coming in at 29k on the staff bar. This is the bar that we have our damage shield on, so this is the important bar to have the high max magicka value on. Now, outside of the damage shield, the high max magicka value doesn't matter that much on this build. The whole issue I had with Pelinals was getting viable damage sustain as well as having a decent magicka pool for the damage shield on this build. But outside of that, I mean, all your other skills are mostly scaling off your weapon spell damage for outgoing damage. So that's the only place that we really need the high max magicka is on that shield bar. Taking a look at our max health in PvP, we're just under 21k. This build does not sport a huge health pool. So we do have the damage shield, which is about an 8k damage shield in PvP. So that gives us about a 29k burst cushion. So it's not terrible, but this is definitely not high on the HP side. And then the maximum stamina on the staff bar is a little bit lower, but on the greatsword bar, it comes up to 21k. And that's because we, of course, are running Hulking Draugr on swap, and we'll get into the sets later. The reason that the max stam changes so rapidly, like the max magicka on this build, was because that was the only way I could actually push the max magicka up to that almost 30k value while still maintaining these other stats. I had to actually get the max stam to dip a little bit on the back bar, and that's actually all right. This build has a crazy amount of stamina recovery, so you don't need a super huge pool to really utilize your stamina skills on this build at all. Our weapon and spell damage buffed on the greatsword is 4,000, just under 4,200, with the enchant 4,800 weapon spell. You can't be upset with this, guys. Crazy weapon spell damage. It's gonna hit hard, okay? Every ability you use is going to deal good damage on this build. This is a solid hybrid damage build, and this big value here reflects that. On the weapon crit, we've got 33%. Spell crit on the staff bar coming in at 35.8%. We are not running the weapon crit buff. You could always get that through your potion, but it's not super important for this build because crit rush is our primary kind of damage skill with physical attacks, and that one's guaranteed to crit anyway. So on the spell side, we have the crit on the spell bar, but it's not actually a huge deal because the majority of our spell damage will be firing off on our other bar anyway. So this is really only going to affect our light and heavy attacks. Our physical spell resistances are not terrible at all. We've got 1,900 spell resist and 1,900 physical resist, so good little amounts there. And then the critical resist on this build is a little bit lower at 1,151. Ideally, I think you want to bring this up a little bit with CP, and we can always adjust the CP to bring that up if you need to. And the reason that this crit resist also is this low is because we are running infused on our pieces here, and that will affect our crit resist as well. You could always opt for more crit resist in the gear if you feel like you need it. On this build, I would recommend having at least 1,500 crit resist, so I am on the spec I have here. Mine's a little lower, but it's because my Slimecraw traits are a little bit off right now. For the Mundus that we're running, we have the Warrior, of course. This is a Pelinals build. Warrior is going to be the best for it. We have the magicka stamina recovery drink, the Cloud Rest Clarified Coffee. This is going to give us 493 magicka stamina recovery. This is the drink you want to use. Crazy sustain coming out of this. You can't go wrong with it. And then for the vampirism, I would recommend that you get it. Vampirism is going to help on this build for your sustain, first of all, giving you a little bit of that 10% bonus to both recoveries. Health recovery is not important for the spec, so Vampirism is not going to hurt you there. And then finally, Undeath comes in handy because we are using damage shields. I've always praised Undeath and damage shields in combination because it is a great way to make your damage shield take less damage. Taking a look at the gear, so as I mentioned, we are running the 5-piece Pelinals. Max health, both recoveries, and what it will do is copy our weapon damage over into spell damage. We are running 5 medium, 1 light, 1 heavy, so we are copying the weapon damage over on this build. So we're stacking as much weapon damage as possible. Pelinals 101. We've got a 2-piece Slime Craw on, and this is going to give us both weapon and spell crit, which is awesome. It'll also give us Minor Berserk, increasing both our physical and magical damage by 8%. That's what we want. Sorc does not get access to that buff, so this is an excellent, excellent helm set to wear for this build. And then here we go, the max stat swap. We've got 5-piece Hulking Draugr on the Greatsword bar, and we swap between the Hulking Draugr to a 2-piece Willpower on the Destro Staff bar. So this is important to run this swap here, and this is why the stats look so wonky when we switch weapons, and why we get that weird wonky stat flow when we switch weapons. But it's very important because this is how I ultimately got us to have access to that max magicka pool so we could have a damage shield on the hybrid Sorc. Hulking Draugr was chosen because it does not require us to have a pet. You could use Necropotence in place instead of Hulking Draugr and run Necro on the staff with Agility on the Greatsword. That being said, that requires you to run a pet, so I think that's a better option for maybe something like a Warden or a Nightblade, or if you do want to run a pet on your hybrid Sorc, that is an option that you can use. But Hulking Draugr is only 500 less stat on the 5-piece, so it is more than fine to use Hulking instead if you don't want to run the pet. For the traits on the gear, guys, we've gone with Infused on our big pieces and Well Fitted on the little pieces. Now, the traits here I actually messed up pretty bad putting this together. Ideally, it should be Infused here, 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 and then Well Fitted on these little guys. But I screwed that up pretty bad. I didn't even do the helms. I forgot to change them entirely. Now, if you don't want to run Infused and you want to go for maybe the Impenetrable so you have more crit resist, you should run the 3 Well Fitted, drop the Infused for the 3 Impenetrable. And I'd say drop the Infused because the max stat is really nice for this build, but at the end of the day, the Well Fitted, I think, is more important for the roll dodge because we are in medium armor, and that's going to be a huge part of our survivability. If we look at the enchants on the jewelry, we have gone with full weapon damage enchants, and then we've gone with full infused jewelry traits as well. This will buff up the weapon damage with another 100 extra weapon damage, bringing it to 278 per enchant. And this, of course, is copied over into spell damage by our Pelinals set. Absolutely fantastic. Infused jewelry is really what makes Pelinals the best hybrid set in the game. And then finally, for the weapons, we've got the Infused back bar with the weapon spell damage enchant. And then on the front bar, we've got the Nirnhone Greatsword. The enchant is your choice here. You can go for disease, poison, whatever you like. You could even go for a poison that gives you the minor brutality buff, so you get a little bit more weapon damage on your front bar, give you about 200 extra weapon damage when it procs. So you have a lot of option on the front bar what you want to run for enchant. The important thing to do is make sure you do Infused on the back bar. This will make sure that you have that 600 weapon spell damage buff up almost all the time. For the glyphs on the gear, guys, you do want to go with the tri-stat glyphs. This is a hybrid. It needs everything. We need the HP, we need the magicka, we need the stamina. You really want to go tri-stat glyphs on all your gear. Alright, so let's take a look at the skills that we're using. So something to mention really quick here is that the weapons and skills that we use are entirely subjective. It's a hybrid build, guys. You can use whatever weapon combination you want and whatever abilities that you want. These are just the skills that I chose for a PvP-oriented burst kit. It's really up to you though, guys. You can use whatever you want here, so if you don't like what I have here, feel free to change it to whatever you want. So let's, that being said, let's move on. The first ability that we have on our Greatsword bar is, of course, Executioner. And this is going to be our finisher move. You can go with the single target or the AoE morph. This is a single target focused build, so I think Executioner is the better morph for it. This is just going to be a great execute. A good substitute for this ability, of course, is the Storm Calling Mage's Fury. And either morph of this, whichever one you want, is going to be a great execute too. And also on top of it, if you really want, you could actually run Mage's Fury on your back bar in place of another ability here, and you could couple it with the Executioner to have some pretty deadly execute potential. It may not seem like a good idea stacking both executes together. What Mage's Fury ends up doing is making sure that Executioner really finishes off whatever you hit with it. So it becomes a very powerful combination. The next ability that we have is Critical Rush. This is going to be the primary gap closer. We are using Streak a lot on this build. Streak into Crit Rush is a combo that is so much fun to do on a Sorc. We don't have a lot of footage of this build, but you get to see a little bit of the Streak Crit Rush combos and how great it is. And Crit Rush is important for it. Crit Rush, of course, is going to be a guaranteed crit, dealing bonus damage the further we are away from the target, pairing it really well with Streak. The next ability that we have is Haunting Curse, and this is going to be an excellent just kind of dot ability. 3.5 seconds later, they get that massive 11.5k damage, and then of course it goes on again 8.5 seconds after that. So it's quite a good burst ability. You can couple this with your Critical Rush to have just crazy amounts of burst damage on your target. You throw a curse on them, streak through them, and then turn around, light attack, crit rush back into them, and it all lands when your curse explodes. Go for an execute to bring your target down. Such a great CC controlled movement combo, and curse fits so well into it. The next ability that we have is Rally. This is very important, giving us Major Brutality, so this is going to give us both our weapon and spell damage buffs, because the weapon damage gets copied over, so it's the only one we need. And then finally, it's going to be a nice heal over time, as well as the burst heal. And this is your primary heal on this build. You have quite a bit of healing power, because we are running an overload bar as well, with a few other abilities that we can heal on there as well. But Rally is going to be your mainstay primary heal. A mixture of Rally and your Hardened Ward and Roll Dodge is pretty much all you need to stay alive on this build. Honestly, medium armor with these kind of sustains, you have some pretty good survivability if you just play it right. Taking a look at Boundless Storm, this is going to be here for that armor buff, as well as the Major Expedition. Now, the Major Expedition I think is really important for PvP, and that's why I went with the Boundless morph as opposed to Hurricane. If you do want to run a potion that gives you access to Major Expedition, then you could actually go with Hurricane and go for the increased damage on it, as well as the 10% movement speed, just giving you more speed on your hybrid Sorc. This is going to be a really fast build, so you're ready quite quick on it, so just coupling more speed on it could be really beneficial too. But I did Boundless Fury because it does just fit this build completely, opening up your ability to use whatever potions you want by covering all your buffs. So there you go. For the ultimate on this bar, we've gone with Flawless Dawnbreaker. Now, Flawless Dawnbreaker is a good choice because it's going to give you that 5% weapon damage bonus, double dipping. It's going to count towards your spell damage too, so I'd highly recommend going Flawless for the hybrid. You can go with Dawnbreaker of Smiting. The stun is really nice, but it's definitely not necessary. We have Streak. Streak is an excellent AoE stun. You definitely don't need to go Smiting if you've got Streak, so there you go. Taking a look at the staff bar, the first ability we have is Flame Clench. Now, this is kind of your open ability, I think. I went with Flame Clench because it was a nice long-distance stun. I had also used Mage's Fury here as well, and I liked both abilities, and that was kind of my two choices, was Flame Clench, Mage's Fury. Flame Clench is also nice because it gives you access to your Destro staff passives, which could be really beneficial, especially if you want to even run a Frost Staff. Having those passives will be important too. And then just having the Immobilize off the Frost Staff could be really nice as well. But Flame Clench, of course, gives me the 8% bonus single target damage on my staff bar. So I actually have a pretty decent heavy attack on the staff bar by having Flame Clench slotted here. Okay, so the next ability we have is Inner Light. This is here for that 8% max magicka bonus that it provides. It'll give us 5% max magicka plus the 7% bonus. 5% max magicka plus the 2% for being a Mage's Guild skill. Very, very nice. And that's pretty much why it's here. The crit bonus that it gives is nice, but it is definitely not a necessity for this build because we just don't have a lot of spell crits damage-wise on this bar anyway. The next ability we have is Hardened Ward. This is going to be our damage shield, and as you can see here, we're coming in at almost 7k plus the 23% in PvP, so we're just at that 8k mark on the damage shield. So it's not bad at all. It's a 3k cost, so it's a very cheap shield, and coupled with medium armor and the rally healing, it's a very effective style to play on the Sorc. We can effectively block and roll dodge a lot on this build, so coupling a damage shield in there gives you a lot of defensive utility. So that was important, and like I had mentioned earlier, it was important to get this shield to be functional for this hybrid in PvP. The next ability we have is Bound Aegis. I'm just going to skip Streak real quick. And Bound Aegis is here as well for that 8% magicka bonus. You no longer have to have this on both bars. You just have to have it slotted on one bar. And this is part of how we're getting that Hardened Ward to be viable on this build by putting Bound Aegis here. And then finally we have Streak as the last normal ability. Streak is such a good skill, a massive AoE stun. It's going to propel you forward, I think it's 28 or so meters, stunning everybody that you go through. Now it does cost more if you spam it, so you don't want to spam it too much, but with this build, Streak into Crit Rush, such a great lockdown combo, so much fun to use. And yeah, I can't say enough good things. Streak is my favorite sorcerer ability, and this is the way that I like to use Streak personally, so I've really enjoyed playing it this way. And then finally we have Overload. Overload is here because it gives us access to the Overload bar. It's nice to have it too. It is a nice spiky attack if you want to have that powerful range spike. However, it is mostly here for access to that third bar. So if we activate our Overload and take a look at our Overload bar, we have the same bar as our staff bar. We've got Inner Light, Bound Aegis, and Hardened Ward, but the big difference here is that we have Critical Surge in place of Streak, and then Dark Conversion in place of our Destro Staff attack. So the reason that I went with the Overload bar on this build was because these are buffs. Like, Surge is a great buff to have, and it's quite a long duration, so you can put it on your Overload bar and still use it viably. And then Dark Conversion is also a really great skill to use, but because the sustain on this build was so high, these were actually like not necessity skills, but I still wanted access to them, so putting them on the Overload bar was the way to go. And the reason I left these skills here was just so I still had my damage shield on my Overload bar. You can do your damage shield, blocks, and roll dodge, and still actually like tank pretty hard on your Overload bar too. Alright guys, let's take a look at the champion points. We got 31 Warlord, 16 Sprinter, and 5 Bashing Focus. We've got to break free, we've got to sprint, and we've got to bash in that order, and that's why we have this spread here. In the Lover Tree, 56 Mooncap, 56 Arcanist. These are your most important green passives to dump into at the beginning. You want to make sure you bulk up your recoveries, because that's really what's going to determine your survivability off the bat. A little bit in Tenacity as well to increase the amount of resource return we get on our heavies. And the important passive here is Wind Running. 2% movement speed is nice, but that 10% bonus magicka recovery while sprinting is what we're looking at. That's the beautiful part right there. In the Shadow Tree, we've got 44 Tumbling and 31 Shadow Ward. We've got to roll dodge and we've got to block. Both are very important for PvP, and we are in medium armor, so we focus more on tumbling here. So taking a look at our Apprentice Tree, 7 Elfborn, 32 Elemental Expert, and 15 Spell Erosion. Focus, of course, on Elemental Expert, as that's just going to bulk all of our outgoing damage in PvP, a little bit on the crit and a little bit in the penetration. Not a ton of points here. We do get our Spell Precision passive, which is the important one, but the reason we don't have a lot is because we have dumped heavily in the Atronach. We are playing the Tactician off-balance hybrid, and this is just going to give us the 10% bonus damage with Exploiter. And this goes to both our magic and our physical damage attacks, so this is going to bulk up our damage big time. And the reason I went Tactician on this particular build and not on the Templar was because we are using the Destro Staff and the two-handed sword, so we have powerful light and heavy attacks, so Tactician was a viable way for me to dump points on this build. So you can see we've went 61 Master at Arms, 21% increased direct damage attacks, which is a lot of our attacks, and then finally 29 Physical, 31 Staff Expert, and this is going to bulk up those heavies. And then in the Ritual Tree, we have got 32 Mighty, 30 Piercing, and 13 in Precise Strikes. Like I had mentioned, Exploiter being the important passive, mixing with the off-balance passive from the other tree, and focusing on the Mighty Piercing, and then a little bit in crit. So taking a look at the Red Tree, we have got 45 resistant, 48 ironclad, 3 spell shield, 3 medium armor focus. Resistant, of course, to reduce the incoming crit damage we take, and ironclad to reduce incoming direct damage we take. In the lady tree, we've got 27 hardy, 27 elemental defender, and 23 in thick-skinned. Nice even focus here, because we want to make sure we reduce all incoming damage. We don't have a purge, so thick skin, of course, is going to be an important one for us too. And then in the Lord tree, we've got 51 Bastion, 23 Quick Recovery. So this is kind of subjective to how you guys want to do it. I think that going this way is probably the best way. You don't want to neglect your healing too much. That being said, if you want to dump more points into Bastion, you totally can. You could definitely push a 9k damage shield on this build if you wanted to by dumping more points into Bastion, but it's really just kind of up to the preference of the player.
Alright guys, so I do not have a lot of footage for this build, and I apologize for that. There's a few reasons for it. Number one, I just had trouble, honestly, finding a lot of people to fight on the PTS, and when I did, as you can see right there, Streak is not working half the time on the PTS, so this build is actually an ass to play on the PTS, unfortunately. However, I did want to show you guys that it is viable and you can fight with it, and it does have some pretty decent damage, as you can see there. We put a pretty nice smack into that guy, but this guy here fights really well. I had a lot of good fights with him, and he actually takes the win on most of the fights that we had, but this was the longest one that we had, and I thought this was the fight where at least I played the best in it. So here you can see the build kind of in action. Unfortunately, you don't get to see the Streak Crit Rush combo in full earnest. I wish I could deliver it for you guys like that, but unfortunately, it doesn't work all the time. And you'll see me try for it, and it just won't work sometimes. But there you can see I'm a little sticky with the overload bar. I try again to go for that streak, but it's not going to let me. There's another streak failure again. I decide, okay, screw it. We'll just dump the combo on him. But it's not enough damage, so we just rebuff here and re-engage. Our magicka's a little low, but I do not have the overload bar up because I did drop the Dawnbreaker. Not the biggest deal. I do have quite a bit of stam to work with here and some great regens, so I should be able to hold on until my overload bar is back up. And as you can see, we managed to do it just fine. He's also resetting the stam Sorc here, resetting his abilities, making sure that he's got his combos ready. I didn't go for the overload here yet. As you guys can see, I'm still a little bit of a noob on this build. I'm bad with that overload bar, that's for sure. And here I actually go for the overload bar just to put my surge buff up, not actually to go for it. And you can see the sustain on this build is pretty freaking good, hey? We haven't gone for that overload, and we were able to keep some great sustain. There you see we managed to get an awesome combo off on him, and we finish him off there. But there you saw in that fight, unfortunately, Streak is just not functioning on the PTS, so I was unable to provide you guys with a lot of footage. That being said, guys, thank you so much for watching the build. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you like what you saw here. If you did, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you guys want to see this Buildcraft live, I do stream on Twitch, so feel free to come check me out on Twitch. Link to that, of course, is in the description of the video below. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast, a VPN for gamers. If you guys get crap pinged to your favorite games and you're tired of it, maybe a VPN is the thing for you. They are a local Canadian company, and I've been with them for half a year now, and I absolutely love it. It's helped me out with my ESO ping problems, so I've been enjoying it. Not to mention the added security benefits of using a VPN are there as well. Of course, it is free to try from the link in the description below. So anyway, guys, I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, enjoy the Brids. We're going to have more coming. The next on the list is the, well, we'll see. I don't even want to say because I honestly don't know, if I have to be honest. I just don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm feeling inspired to go towards the Warden. I mean, it'll play a better max stat route. What do you guys think? What Brid do you guys want to see next? Have a good night, everybody.